I'm Andrew Minson from the Global Cement and Concrete Association. I'm responsible for concrete and sustainable construction. For those unfamiliar with GCCA, we were launched 12 months ago. We are the representative body of our sector. We are CEO-led with member companies from across the world, and we have around 40% of cement manufacturing capacity from our members. We also have affiliates, and they are cement and concrete trade associations from countries and regions. And once again, they are very representative from across the globe. I'm delighted to welcome you to this webinar. Ethical sourcing is part of all of our daily lives, whether that be purchasing consumer goods, food products like coffee, tea, chocolate, bananas, but also clothing, and major manufacturers like Nike, etc., are always trying to ensure they are responsible sourced. In construction, I first encountered responsible sourcing almost 15 years ago when contractors who were serving international banks in the City of London were concerned about sourcing stone from overseas and the risk to their corporate social responsibility credentials. The contractors wanted to know what schemes might exist in the world of construction. And at that time, a specific scheme was established for the UK market across all materials. And then soon after that, in 2008, in the UK, central government set a target for 25% of all construction products to be responsibly sourced. And for those unaware, I'm delighted to say that the concrete sector in the UK responded, and currently approximately 90% of concrete sourced today in the UK would be responsibly sourced. So just a third bit of introduction I'd like to say would be that whilst concrete sustainability credentials are best communicated as whole life, so sourcing through manufacture, through use and end of life, and in terms of our communication, we prefer and try and communicate the breadth of sustainability rather than be forced down to the narrow conduit of just carbon. You will hear today that responsible sourcing gives that breadth to sustainability, and it is more than carbon. And with respect to whole life, whilst we want to and do talk about all of concrete performance benefits, durability, longevity, reuse, repurposing, and ultimately recycling options, we do also, to be heard in that communication of whole life, we do need to communicate the great efforts of the industry at responsible sourcing and manufacturing of our product. And a responsible sourcing certification is a tool to do just that, to help us do that communication. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our speakers today, representing the Concrete Sustainability Council. So you'll be hearing today from Christian Artelt from Heidelberg Cement, who is the chairman of Concrete Sustainability Council, and Michael Sharp from Lafarge Holcim, who is vice chairman of the CSC. So with no further ado, I will just hand over control to Christian, who'll kick us off with the first part of the talk.
Yeah, welcome everyone also from my side. I'm hoping you do see my screen. I'm now going to the presentation mode. How do we get this off? Here we go. Yeah, I'm Christian Adelt. I'm chairing the Concrete Sustainability Council, and it's a pleasure to have you here today. So the first very important question, obviously, is why we should have responsibly sourced concrete. So that is basic principle. So we started basically with thinking coming from wood. Wood, as you know, is often perceived as the responsible choice when it comes to construction materials. And this is supported by a strong label. You probably know all the FSC certified wood. For example, if you look at the paper which you use for your Xerox machine, it is typically FSC certified. Also, if you go to an IKEA shop in order to buy new furniture, you will usually see the FSC label on the furniture, on the packaging. What you see on this slide on the bottom right is a nice concrete bench located near Heidelberg in a park, and it was printed by people saying Beton nein danke, which means basically concrete no thanks. And that clearly shows us that the public perception of concrete remains with significant improvement potential. The Concrete Sustainability Council, CSC, what is it? We are an independent organization. It's actually a non-for-profit organization which is based in Geneva, Switzerland, and was founded in 2016 by concrete producers, by concrete associations, and certification institutes. The CSC certification system is the first and only internationally one which has been successfully introduced for concrete. Certification systems for responsibly wood are already on the market. I just mentioned FSC. There's also PFC. For natural stone, there's also a label on the market. And for other materials such as aluminum or steel, they are close to rolling out. We have a number of members in the Concrete Sustainability Council. There are associations, producers, certifiers, and affiliates. You see associations FIP from Latin America, a number of European ones, the German Ready-Mix Concrete Association BTB, Federbeton from Italy, Betonhuis, it's the Dutch one. Then we have the Turkish Association and the Belgish Association on board. Those organizations, they are typically the regional system operator for the Concrete Sustainability Council in their respective countries. We have also the European Concrete Platform as a member, and most important, the Global Cement and Concrete Association, GCCA, which is hosting this webinar today. Producers are important concrete manufacturers, which you see here: Cemex, CRH, Dyckerhoff, Heidelberg Cement, Lafarge Holcim, Titan. So mostly based in Europe, but also beyond. And a broad range of certifiers. We will speak later about this, which assure quality of the CSC certification system through third-party auditing. We recently generated also a new membership class of affiliates, and we have a first member here, which help us to communicate about sustainable, responsible sourcing beyond our immediate business partners. The CSC was actually started in form of a project in 2014 and has developed quite significantly since then. We were at first setting up the organization. That happened in 2016, started to develop a technical manual, and with a huge stakeholder consultation also to ensure that the system, the CSC certification system, would be robust. We entered into the dialogue with green building certification schemes, namely DGNB in Germany, BREEAM in the United Kingdom, and more recently also with the United States Green Building Council in the United States. In 2017 already, we had 50 plants being certified, most of them in the Netherlands, but the system at that time already started to spread into Germany and Northern America. The number of members had grown to beyond 20. We are now in November 2019, and where we are standing, we have achieved recognition in BREEAM, DGNB, and Envision. I will come to this in a short moment. In the meantime, around 250 plants have been certified according to the CSC system, most of them concrete plants, but the system has now also penetrated into the supply chain. That means that many cement plants and also aggregate producers have become CSC certified. We have sold more than 420 registration rights. What does it mean? That tells us that more than 150 projects are in the pipeline or will start in the near future. The rollout is continuing, but beyond the initial scope of countries, most recently we had the certifications in Italy, in Poland, Belgium, and Latin America. Yeah, very important, I think, for our customers. So for the concrete plants in particular, is the alignment with green building labels. We'll come to the benefit of this later. We have achieved official recognition in the BREEAM system with a certain differentiation. So a bronze certificate scores at the level 4, silver at the level of 5, and that's important to be said, is the same level as FSC mixed wood, and gold is even scoring higher at the level of 6. In Germany, we have achieved recognition in the DGNB system for certificates at the level of gold and silver, also here at the same level as FSC mixed wood. Other recognition include Envision, and there's also a recognition in a Dutch incentive program for sustainable construction. We have entered with the support of GCCA in the dialogue with the United States Green Building Council in order to, with a target to achieve recognition in LEED. To give you a brief overview of the CSC in the world, you see we started basically in Europe with countries with Netherlands and Germany, now still having most of the certificates, but the system has also been taken up with in Northern America, most lately in Latin America with the support of FEEP, and in European countries such as Poland, Italy, Belgium, and also in Turkey. See a brief overview of the certificates being issued. Most of them in yellow here in the graph on the left-hand side, you see these are the certificates that reflects the number of concrete plants that have been certified. In red and blue, the supply chain, cement and aggregates, and most recently, we have also developed a system for recycled aggregate producers, which starts to be taken up in the Netherlands in particular. So the exact number as of today is 246 plants being certified with around 150 projects in the pipeline. Yeah, and with that, we are coming to the part where my colleague Michael is going to explain us the certification system in more detail. I will have to hand over the presentation to him. Let me get this being done.
Thank you, Christian. I take over in the meantime, introduce myself. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Sharp from Lafarge-Holcim. I'm head of sustainable construction, and as Andrew introduced me, also the vice chair of the CSC and heading the technical committee of the CSC. And in that function, I also want to give you an overview of, yeah, now it works, Christian. I want to give you an overview of a bit of mechanics and how the CSC is working. So, question: Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, Michael, I can see it.
Okay. So here on this slide, you see, that's an overview of the entire criteria of the CSC system. You see that it's structured according to what I would call the usual suspects of sustainability. It's not meant in a despicable way. It's if you look into green building labels like BREEAM, LEED, DGNB, you find exactly the same categories. So it has a number of prerequisites. It's touch basing on management criteria, social, environmental, economical criteria, and then also, and that is a bit the speciality, we come to this also in a minute, the chain of custody. Prerequisites is something which is not negotiable, where we only know black and white, so like ethical legal compliance, human rights, that, indigenous people in certain regions, and so on. Those are topics you have to fulfill to obtain a CSC certification, no way around that. Management, that is in general everything on environmental management systems, sustainable purchasing, quality management systems, health and safety management. We took good care that we were building upon what's out there anyway. So like ISO 14001, ISO 9001, or OHSAS 18001 certifications. So those would plug in seamlessly into the management criteria so that you do not have to do work twice if you want to obtain points here. Social is about engagement with local communities, but also a lot on health and safety, access to water, access to medical treatment, also training. Environmental is very much on many topics that we are very familiar out of the cement and concrete industries, like the use of land, like biodiversity, water, emissions. It's important to note that in those criteria, we also separate a bit according to what is being certified. Is it the concrete plant, or is it the cement plant or the aggregate plants? So some of those criteria are heavier on certain subjects of certification. You'll see this in an overview also in a minute. Economic, that is how the local business is being supported by plants, but also how innovation is being implemented. So this is also the place where you find our innovation credit. It's a credit in which you can score one of the single highest number of points, a very important credit with which companies can submit their innovations for scoring points. And then last but not least, the chain of custody. So there you find the cement and the aggregates, and also lately the clinker. That is something we took out of the stakeholders' feedback, saying focusing just on the concrete plant is not sufficient for managing the sustainability, the responsible sourcing practice of concrete. There have to be systems dedicated to cement and aggregates, and clinker then as a function of aggregates. We will show you how this works then in particular on the next slide. But that is something which is special to the CSC system. Here you see also a different philosophy from, for instance, the FSC system, whereas FSC is a pure chain of custody certificate. So it really goes from the forest to the end product. And if you break this chain of custody somewhere in between, you're out. The CSC system is a performance-based system. So the philosophy is that you overall are scoring certain results, but the way you're performing, you have certain flexibilities within certain frameworks or within certain limits. You have flexibilities to score your points. So that is very close to, for instance, the BREEAM system. And BREEAM understood this immediately in their recognition process. They have the same thinking on performance-based achievements. DGNB was a bit more difficult because they came very much from the FSC thinking. And so explaining to them that there are different ways to exceptional performance took us some effort. It's still taking us sometimes some effort. So it's really a matter of what kind of philosophy do you put behind a system like this. And ours is performance-based. So now we get very often asked, so what does make CSC concrete special? What makes it different versus ordinary concrete, especially when you follow the performance-based standard, where you sometimes also have lower performances you are allowing lower performances being then offsetted or traded off by higher performances in different places. So, but there are certain prerequisites, and there are also certain criteria which have to be fulfilled to obtain levels. So it goes basically around fair business practices. It goes about carbon emissions or emissions in general. It goes around transport. We are addressing biodiversity. We are addressing occupational health and safety, and also circularity. And then in more specific, so on business practices, so you have to obtain frameworks for ethical legal compliance. Also, you have to sign or be a signatory of Declaration of Human Rights. And on the bottom of the box, you then see what level, what CSC certification level those prerequisites are required for. This goes through the entire system for any level that is out there. Then on carbon emissions, it's reporting, awareness creation for workers, but then also having a policy, a commitment to reduce carbon emissions. There you see that this is, of course, then valid for cement only. That's what I meant by some of those criteria apply to certain subjects of certification, and also publicly available CO2 target. On transport, it's plainly the transport management system, but also as it is described in the credit, behind the transport management system stands a reporting or a tracking of fuel and CO2 emissions, and then also the optimization of those. Biodiversity, so management systems around biodiversity, environmental management system. Also, environmental social impact assessment is a prerequisite to obtain a certification. Protection against contaminations, and for quarries, so that means for cement and aggregates, a biodiversity management and action plan. In operational health and safety, as a prerequisite, we can say it's the policy, and it's also that this is available and trained to any employee, to every employee. A risk analysis, a regularly performed risk analysis, monitoring, and also reporting of incidents, quick access to medical treatment. Circularity, that is on certain measures handling or recycling concrete, and in specific on return concrete, but also we have certain prerequisites in case a plant is located in a water scarce area. In that case, then certain add-on prerequisites apply. For instance, water consumption monitored and reported. So that's a selection of those topics which make CSC concrete special, which make it different from ordinary concrete. And so that would then also be your slide deck if you're arguing towards customers or towards stakeholders. So what is CSC about in specific, in practice? And here you see the functionality of the supply chain within a concrete certificate. On the right-hand side of the slide, you see that's a concrete certificate, and CSC at the end of the day is a concrete certificate only. But it would not work without a supply chain certificate from cement and from aggregates, those you see in the middle of this slide. And those are seamlessly plugging into the concrete certificate. So you're benefiting from a cement certification and an aggregate certification supporting your concrete certification. You see the weight, 25% for cement, 60% for concrete. So for a concrete plant in isolation, and 15% for aggregates. That has been challenged every now and then because the 60% versus cement can, if you look at carbon emissions, for instance, are not reflecting reality. But we put it consciously that way because we wanted, in the beginning, enable concrete plants to obtain at least a silver certification out of themselves. So in being autark. That is a hen-egg topic. So we had to enter a market. We had to offer also something to concrete plants to obtain certain certificates. And so the 60% are designed in a way that you have to have a really exceptional performance on the concrete only, then you would obtain silver. Gold would be impossible. And now seeing in some markets also cement taking up and having a sufficient supply of cement in certain markets. Let's see where this is moving to, where the cement maybe at a later point of time also gets a different weight. So, but that is how the certificate is working and operating. And then you just calculate those results, the two from cement and aggregates, with their individual weight, together with the concrete certificate with its individual weight. And then you score points, and you see that you can score gold, silver, bronze. Platinum is not available yet. We are holding this back until we know exactly what BREEAM and DGNB are expecting from labels like ours for the highest level of recognition, and then we will adapt this a bit to those standards. So with 35% you score bronze, silver 50%, gold 65%, and then once it's available, platinum 80%. You have to fulfill all prerequisites, no certification without prerequisite. And then if you want to score silver and gold, a couple of additional prerequisites will apply. So the system is cascaded upwards towards higher levels with additional prerequisites that then needs to be fulfilled to obtain silver and gold. Very similar, just different performance levels for aggregates and for cement. So cement starts with 60%, goes up to 98%. Aggregates starts with 50, goes up to 95%. That's just a bit reflecting reality, how easy it is to achieve points. And so we have to adapt this. They are supplier certificates. That's the official name for them. So they get a special supplier certificate, which means you do not get a recognition in a green building label with a cement or aggregate certificate. You will get recognition through the concrete certificate, which builds upon cement and aggregate certificates. But also same logic here, prerequisites, also some higher prerequisites or some more prerequisites for higher levels of certification. And then you score a percentage. It's not points. In this case, you score percentage, which then goes mathematically into the holistic score of the concrete plant. Now, a couple of words also on how the system works, because we think it's important to be aware of, also because it is a key topic towards green building councils or green building labels, which we are asking for recognition. They are not only asking for what is the materiality of your system, they are asking for how's your system built up. How can you ensure independency of the system? How can you ensure non-greenwashing and non-self-declarations? And that is what Christian mentioned with the certification bodies. They come in place or to the picture here. So on the top of this slide, you see the CSC global. So we are owning the CSC system. We have developed this. But you also see in the same picture the regional system operators. So in countries like Netherlands, Germany, in Turkey, Belgium, also other countries, we have regional partners, regional system operators, Italy as well, which then are operating the system on our behalf. To a very limited extent, we are also then allowing some local adaptation when it comes to providing evidence. And so they are rolling out that system then locally. And that is then the system, that is the certification system. And then comes a break, because then as a plant, you register at the CSC, but then you assign a certification body, an independent entity, which must not have any economic connection to us as a system operators, which does a completely independent, third-party verified assessment of the certification. So you submit your evidence, as independent certification bodies assess your evidence, signs it off, and once it's been signed off, then the certification body issues the certificate to you as a plant. And with that, then you can go to green building labels. You can then provide with those labels to your customers, and they can score in the green building labels. That is a screenshot of this tool. So that is exactly where a plant is working in. So they are uploading evidence into this tool. And that's exactly also where a certification body then is assessing and providing feedback to the evidence. They can then enter any comments or questions into this. And in the same tool, the certification body can also then sign off and issue the certificate. And with that, you also have to develop as an association a certain governance structure, and that has not been there in the first place. So that has evolved and developed over time. But in the meantime, we are working on this setup since now 1 year roughly. Turned out to be quite practical setup. So we have the CSC members, which then vote an executive committee that you see on top left. The executive committee is then the executive body of the entire membership of the CSC. And they are supported by the management team that are Christian, Richard Wilkes from CRH, and myself. We are then doing the executive level of the CSC. We are supported by a technical committee, which I'm chairing, by a communication committee, which Richard is chairing. So this is the operational level of the CSC. We are supported by a secretariat, and then a secretariat and a coordinator for the tool and for the IT topics. And then you see again the innovation committee. That is that's a key entity in which we have members from academia, from associations, but not from any of cement and concrete companies. So to ensure independency, to ensure compliance, we have designed this innovation committee within Chinese walls. So no industry has ever have a look into the activities and also what the submissions to the innovation committee, to keep this completely separate and completely compliant. And we have then, now we are in the process of setting up the advisory committee. We have their independent civil society organizations. We have now acceptance from a colleague from Birds Life, from the GCCA Europe, which is the legal arm of the US GBC of LEAD in Europe. So they will join this. It's being headed by HOP3, an independent consultancy from Belgium. And that advisory committee has a consultancy role towards the executive committee. So that is our setup. And I believe with this, I will now hand over to Christian again. And let me, Christian, where are you? Here.
Good. I think I already took it.
You got it.
Do you see my screen? Good. Then we go back into the full screen. So we basically want to show you now, as we come to the end, the opportunities for concrete associations. Well, what's that? Yeah, here we go. Sorry. So what is very important basically for the CSC is the local support for the success. We have seen that by a very early engagement of VOBN and BTB, so the German and Dutch ready-mix concrete associations in the system, that the system then found ground in those two respective countries. And if you are a concrete association, it's really helpful that you inform your members about the value of CSC certification. Now, the big question is, what is this value? It's twofold. The first value is obviously directly for the whole concrete sector. And this is promoting concrete as the sustainable construction material of choice. We have talked earlier about the perception of wood versus concrete. So the CSC certification system, if you engaged, that helps proactively shaping the public perception of the concrete industry and ensure that the overall market share of concrete in construction remains as it is today or even gains relevance. And you are able to convey a firm positive positioning of concrete against other building materials. Secondly, there's also value for certifying companies, for each individual company that undergoes this process successfully. There is image and cash benefit. For example, you are able, with a certificate, to enter into a credible dialogue on sustainability with your customers and other stakeholders, such as your surrounding communities. So this is really an excellent opportunity. And certified companies, they have also the opportunity to differentiate and perform in green building labels and in public procurement. With the recognition in green building labels, you can basically provide your customers with added value that they can gain higher scoring in such labels. There is clearly above average growth in the green buildings market. Here's one example. So in Germany, the transaction volume in 2016 was already around 7.4 billion euros, and with a growth rate higher, significantly higher even than the market average. The CSC system is a worldwide standard. That is also important. That provides an opportunity for creating synergies, especially if you are globally acting companies. Now, for regional system operators, you have the opportunity to become a regional system operator if you are a concrete association and if this provides value for your members. With that, we come to an end. There will be a question and answer session, and I think this will be moderated by Andrew. Andrew, I provide you now with the control of the screen. You should be able to get it now.
Brilliant. Christian, Michael, thank you so much. So the format of these Q&As, if you can actually type in the chat box that you can see in front of you, and if you have any questions that are you think of general interest, do type them in there. And just whilst you do that, I would just flag up that the next webinar that we are doing in this series is on environmental product declarations. I'm sure many of you will be aware that GCCA has an industry environmental product declaration tool, and this tool enables companies to produce the data for cement and concrete products that then is used to create an EPD. We've had a previous seminar which introduced EPDs, if you're not familiar with them, and that's available upon request, the recording of that webinar. This next webinar happens on December the 5th, and you can register through that long link there. If you that probably won't work for you, but you can contact the office as you did for this webinar to be able to register for that on the 5th. So we have a question that's come in from Juho Lipponen. So the question is, why is it that the Netherlands and Germany are the two lead countries on certification? Were there policy drivers that call for such certification in more than those countries? So just as I think Christian and Michael can both read that question. So as you read that question, yeah, I'll just answer it from the UK perspective. So in the UK perspective, as I said in my introduction, the government did introduce a target in 2008 of response of all construction products on a project. The target was that by 2012, 25% of construction products on a project would be responsibly sourced. Now that period from 2008 to 2012 coincided with the world economic crisis, and the UK government conveniently forgot that they ever set that target, so it was never metricated or reported against. But having set that target, there was a key change in the construction product sector within the UK, which is why, as I said in my introduction, 90% of concrete in the UK is responsibly sourced to a specific UK scheme. So I think that whilst the questioner has observed Netherlands and Germany have got high certification rates. I think you can add the UK to that, even though they're not using the CSC scheme because there's a country-specific scheme. So with that, Michael, shall I hand over to you to add more to the answer to this question?
Yeah. Yeah, and to complement on this, Andrew, so UK was far earlier. So that was 10 years, 8 years
Yes.
earlier
Yeah.
and since then nothing else was there. And then we started the CSC system. In the Netherlands, it's clearly a government commitment. So you get tax incentives with having CSC certified materials. Plus, in the meantime, you even get some interest rate incentives from I think it's the Rabobank. I'm not sure about that, but you get also now in the meantime really economical incentives for having this. Plus a very active association, regional system operator, concrete association, which was then with the perfect timing stepping into this and building upon this, and then creating a market. Plus the BREEAM recognition, which is a bit of a prerequisite for a success in the market. In Germany, it was then the equivalent, the DGNB recognition. You could clearly see the moment we got the recognition in the German system, that was the moment the system ramped up in Germany. So we have prepared the market. We had also a very active association, the BTB, which did a great job in preparing this, in becoming a regional system operator, and in the meantime also doing a really nice promotion. So the video that you see, for instance, on our homepage explaining the CSC, that has been created in Germany first, and then we translated this into English. So it's a connection out of incentive by the Green Building label, which was in the UK BREEAM, which was BREEAM in the Netherlands, DGNB in Netherlands, and that's also why Netherlands is almost twice as big as Germany in numbers of certifications. It's then also the government support, which is very special for the Netherlands, and you hardly see this in any other market.
So I think there's three drivers. One is government policy, one is the sustainability schemes, and the third one would be corporate social responsibility of individual clients. And all of them can play a varying role in trying to drive it. I think it's also of benefit to our industry to drive it because we are competing against a material like timber, which has got the perception of responsible sourcing, and we need to be able to match that with the very good practices that are actually very common within our sector in any case. We've got another question from Norway, from Stein, and this is a question regarding whether we think that the supplier aspect that currently covers cement and aggregates will also be extended to additives. I think potentially, Stein, you mean by that things like secondary cementitious, but it could also be admixtures, I guess. So Michael or Christian, if you could answer that question.
Christian,
Yeah, I can do that. The system is generated in a way that an extra module for admixtures can be produced at any time. We have been in the dialogue, or we are in occasional dialogue with companies from the admixture sector. For the moment, they have decided not to jointly develop such a module, which from our perspective would obviously be important to have expertise from this sector in order to make this meaningful. So this is in the prospective stage. It is likely to come at a certain point in time. For the moment, our focus has been on establishing those modules which are more close to us. So we started to integrate cement and aggregates, now recycled aggregates, but further may come. Yes.
Brilliant, Christian. Well, thank you very much. And I think with that, if there are any other questions, if you can just send them into the office, and if I can't answer them, I'll certainly pass them on to Michael and Christian for them to answer. Thank you very much, Christian and Michael, for taking time to present to us today. GCCA are very supportive of CSC. We're wanting to ensure that as the demand for responsible sourcing is recognised more widely, that those who, in whichever country that may arise, that those people are aware that CSC exists. There's something that can be used. It's been built. We certainly don't want to reinvent the wheel elsewhere, and to have the consistent scheme globally is a real benefit to our industry. So thank you very much for joining us. Any questions that appear on the chat, we'll try and address. Thank you for joining us today, and if you wish to join the 5th of December webinar, please do contact the office. Thank you.